Steve, growing up in London, how did the stories and memories of the Blitz shape your understanding of London and its identity?
Well, at the beginning, it was a case of, adventure playgrounds and stuff like that, where, bombed out areas, which were which were sort of turned into alternative spaces for playgrounds. I remember in West London, and also just the whole idea of the architecture, walking around and there's terrace houses, and all of a sudden there's this, new sort of building, and not understanding it exactly at the time, but as you grow up, you realize, okay, that was a place that was bombed, thinking nothing of it. But you sort of, as you grow up, you sort of have an understanding of the sort of, the real, how can I say, the devastation which was surrounding us. But somehow it was like, it was like the absence of things and the presence of things. It was ghosts, really. It was like living with ghosts in one way or the other.
Can you share more about the moment you discovered the photograph of the small black boy and how it influenced your vision for BLITZ?
Well, the initial idea of wanting to make a movie about the Blitz it happened when I was a war artist in 2003 when I was in Iraq. And having an understanding of war as a civilian was very strange in the way of being in theatre, as they say, being on the ground. Usually when we sort of have ideas of war, or have we're brought information of war is through the media. But there I was on the ground in a war zone. So it kind of brought things to the fore for me in a way. And I wanted, at that time, that's when I thought, I wanted to sort of have an understanding of what that would have been like, in my home city of London. So flash forward a number of years, and I'm doing research for Small Axe. And as I'm doing research for Small Axe, I come across this photograph of this child, this young boy, this black child, on a platform with those oversized coat and a cap and a very large suitcase. And I thought to myself, what's his story? Where he came from? So I was waiting for an in, and that child, became my in. Seeing the war through a child's eyes was my in.
And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the research, the additional research you had to undertake when creating this film.
Well, there's a lot, because again, what was interesting. It wasn't. I don't actually call it research. It was such a pleasure to find out what was going on there. I mean, when I think of the idea of research, it's like hard work and textbooks and so forth and whatnot. But for me, it was just a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of sort of being introduced to things I never knew, which was about my city, the place I lived. So again, I was being sort of introduced to these ghosts as such, and being sort of, and I could visualize them. So it was so exciting, and working with the historian Joshua Levine, who was extraordinary and insightful. One of his books is The Secret History of the Blitz. Was one of the things I was looking at too, as well as others. So there's so much wealth. It was, as you can see in my face, it was a joy.
I wonder if we can talk about Elliott Heffernan, who is an absolute revelation in this film, taking the audience through a series of different emotions. Can you tell us about your experience of casting him, and a little bit about what you were looking for when trying to find an actor to portray George?
Well, when I wrote Blitz, it was one of those things where you finish writing it and you think, oh my goodness gracious, does George exist? Can I find George? Does he exist at all? So then we did the auditions. Again, we opened it up to quite obviously lots of children. Lots of children went through a number of children. And all of a sudden I saw this tape of this boy. Hello, this could be interesting. And there was another group of children we got together. And Elliott was just a person, he was a sort of a diamond in the rough. There he was. And I couldn't believe it in a way. And he was just this, he's the kind of, he had, for me, a certain silent movie star quality. You saw his face and you sort of had some kind of idea possibly of what he was thinking, or not. Even if you didn't, you were fascinated with him and how he reacted to certain things. And it was just a blessing that George, our character in Elliott, existed. I mean, he's tremendous.
And then we have Saoirse Ronan portraying a distraught single mother during World War II. What unique qualities do you believe she brought to this role?
Saoirse, I mean, she's one of the best actresses of her generation. There's no doubt about that. And Saoirse is one of these people. And I've said this before. She's one of these people who's interesting when she's eating cornflakes. You're fascinated. She makes the ordinary extraordinary. There's something which is sort of innate in her that communicates to an audience, and you identify and affiliate with her and empathize with her. and she could only have, for me, played this character. Again, and she had such a wonderful connection with Elliott because she started when she was 9 years old as an actress too. So there was this bond, she, what can I say about her? She's amazing.
I'd love to explore that bond a little bit more because the bond that Rita and George have in the film is a key element of the film. Mm-hmm. How did you work with the actors to ensure that this relationship really developed on and off screen?
I didn't have to. It started immediately. Mm. That was the magic about it. I didn't have to. Elliott and Saoirse just got on like this because, again, I think once Saoirse grew up as a child actress. She was 9 years old. Elliott was 9. So immediately, instinctively, she understood what he was going through, and the support she gave him, and the sort of respect and love that Elliott gave Saoirse was amazing. So they had this bond. They loved being with each other. And then, as well as that, when Paul came into the equation, Paul Weller came to the equation, there was a situation where, these people just loved being together. I mean, you're this 66-year-old man, a 29-year-old woman, and a 9-year-old child, and they just love to hang out with each other. So I didn't have to do much other than to say action. Mm. This is one of those things where I was very fortunate that there was a real bond and real love between these people, and it was fantastic. They love to play together.
And there's a great scene, obviously, when they're playing the piano together, and that really sort of typifies their relationship. And I wanted to talk about music and how much you make it a central role within the film, from that moment at the living room to Rita singing for the BBC and other moments. Can you tell us what inspired you to make it such an integral part of the film's narrative?
Well, it was. Music was, and I think still is, an integral part of who we are as human beings. At that time, it was, again, it was a central part of being entertained. And I feel that I really do think that without music at that time, people would have gone through a deep psychosis, in the sense of the way that the outlet of a voice and a group voices. I mean, we sing together. I think what happened is people lulled each other, people corralled each other, comforted each other, and it was just so infectious that it gave people hope. It gave people an opportunity to think that, hey, tomorrow will be a better day. And it is interesting how, when one sings together as a group, that we come, in order to have a situation where there's a sort of a communal or a sort of a commonality, that these sort of the voices come together, and it's again, and all over the world, religions and so forth, it's seen as some sort of spiritual or religious sort of how can I say ode to God. And I feel that with this situation, a basic situation with pubs, for example, or other situations, this corralling and this lulling was essential for people's sanity at that time of unspeakable horrors.
And I wanted to talk about the score, because it's such a sweeping score, a beautiful score, and it's the third time that you and Hans Zimmer have worked together. Can you give us a little bit of insight into how you approach the score with Hans?
Well, Hans, again, what was interesting about Hans is that his background and his relationship with the BLITZ is very integral. His mother lived in London through the BLITZ. She was evacuated from Germany. And Hans grew up with his mother. Unfortunately, his father passed when he was 5 years old. So when he was involved with the movie, he understood in a very instinctual way the relationship with George and his mother. And I feel that was the starting point for him, seeing the world through George's eyes, seeing this war through George's eyes. And this is what this film was about. It was always about, seeing the world in a way through this pubescent child's eyes. Children, it's right or wrong, At a certain point, there's an ambiguity that comes into play with us adults, where, you sort of start to sort of, compromise or whatever. And with kids, it's right or wrong or bad or good. And I just wanted to sort of have that sort of vision musically in the picture. And I think Hans, as you see when the movie as it progresses, this just changes, not just chords, but orchestral changes, which are really kind of George's journey, because where he starts and where he ends is very, very different.
Now, obviously, the film takes place amid the massive backdrop of World War II, but essentially, this is a story about family. And I wondered how you balance the historical context with the intimate family narrative.
Well, that was the heart and soul of the picture for me, because it is about the personal. Mm-hmm. It is about the individual. It is about the families. It is about that unit. It is about love and family and individuals within the context of, these epic, war, basically. Mm-hmm. So there is this sort of epic quality to the picture, but at the same time, there's an intimacy at the same time. So for me, it was all about that. It was all about what's happening unfortunately in the world now, where you could think of it's not about people making these decisions. It's about the people who unfortunately have to sort of deal with the consequences, and that's what I wanted to focus on, that intimacy, but also not forgetting the context. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and on the context, I mean, this film has some incredible set pieces. I'm thinking about the scenes at Café de Paris to the Balham Underground Station. The challenges that I can imagine that you must have had filming those scenes must have been great. Could you tell us about some of the experiences you had?
They were exciting, first and foremost. It was really exciting. The subway and the underground, I'll say, and the flooding. That was extraordinary, because as Adam Stockhouse, and we basically built that subway in order to flood it with these people and stuff like that. So it was exciting, because it was, and of course I had never done that before. But what was interesting is when you haven't done it before, you do things which everyone said, well, "Can you do that?" Well, just do that. Let's try that, and things work out. So you have this playground to play in. And the other example that you gave was the Café de Paris. Well, again, that set piece. Listen, what was interesting is reconstructing things that actually happened. These are historical events. And for example, when you hear "Oh Johnny" being sung at that moment, is exactly the song that was sung once the bomb hit. And to reconstruct these things it was don't get me wrong, it was difficult. It was tiring, and sort of a lot of effort was put into it, but it was extraordinarily rewarding as well. Yeah, it was wonderful, because I suppose what you're doing is recreating a moment in time which has never been visualized before.
And then finally, what would you like audiences to take away from your film?
For me, what it comes down to is the idea that the only thing worth living for, only thing worth dying for, is love. Mm-hmm. That's it. You could get on. I think hopefully this film says, and for 5 minutes when you're away from your iPhone, possibly you could think about that. Mm. Yeah, that's all.
Great, Steve McQueen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.